All right, y'all, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Kind of want to keep it to an hour here. The recordings will start going on to Spotify, the podcast. I got that all worked out yesterday, so I don't want to have to record stuff again. So I'm just gonna go ahead and go, even though there's nobody here. We'll go over everything that we've covered up until now. Somebody's asking about other lessons. I may go back and record some of the other lessons leading up that didn't end up on my timeline, just so those can go onto the podcast. Had a couple people ask about non-Facebook group message. I think right now the options are Discord and WhatsApp. So if you're interested in those, you can sign up for those by posting in the comments or messaging me directly, and we can get those set up that way. Those of you who aren't on Facebook can be part of a group chat, and those and that way we don't have a mix of Android and Apple group chats, because sometimes that gets a little bit awkward. So it sounded like that was the best way to go. If you have another suggestion, we're open to doing that. Just let me know, what would work best. As long as we have, 3 or 4 people in there, we can go ahead and get one started. That's really all it takes. So if it's you and your language buddy, which you guys all should be looking for language buddies, wanting to get in on a group chat with a few other people, just let us know. We'll get it all set up for you. Okay, so we're gonna, since some of the other videos didn't post, same thing we did last week. We'll just kind of go over everything that we've covered. We'll go over everything that we've covered a little more in depth this time, because we introduced a new concept last week. So we'll spend a little bit of time on everything that we've gone over, and then spend the rest of the time going over introducing verb conjugation, which is a complicated subject, so we're going to go over it again. Yeah, I'll put the only ones that have actually recorded, Jill, are lessons 1 and lessons 5, which are up. Number 2 on my Facebook page. Number 2 got canceled. 3 recorded, or 3 didn't record. 4 recorded but got taken down by Facebook for some reason, I'm not sure. And then 5 is up. I have 5, I think, saved in my stream recordings, but I'm not 100% sure. But that's kind of the same thing I was just talking about with the podcast. I may have to just re-record those lessons. We can do like a whole, start all over again for people, or I can just record them on my own and post them to Spotify, I think was the main one people were after, but we can do YouTube too. As long as I have the recording, I'll put them up there. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. This is the alphabet. For those of you who've been over this already, it's going to seem a little redundant, but it's really important. If you haven't been over it before, we're going to go over it kind of fast. If it's not making sense, shoot me a message or post it in the comments, and we can go back over it again really thoroughly, like we did in lesson number 3. Lesson number 1 was just a lot of talking about why learning the alphabet is important. So if you're wondering why we need to go through all of this, you can watch video number 1 on my Facebook page. But really is the importance is that we want to be able to write things down in a way that we can pronounce them back consistently. So a big part of what we're doing with this course is giving everybody the tools to self-study. So if you just listen to me talk for an hour, twice a week, it's going to take you a really long time to learn the language, and that's okay. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. But what I want to do is give you the tools so you can look things up in the dictionary, so that we can send out more materials, and you'll have the ability to pronounce them back to yourself correctly and practice all the sounds and everything. Build your confidence so that when you get in situations where you're speaking with people, you're less timid about it. And that's part of what's going to happen with the group chat. Is all of the tools that we're going to go over today are going to give you the ability to, at your own pace, come up with topics that you want to discuss that you can post in the group chat in the language. So by that I mean, if you want to talk about that you went, just practice saying that I went riding my horse today. So you can use these tools to figure out exactly how to say that. You post it in the group chat in a way that it's spelled correctly. All of us who are learning the language and are trying to decipher what it is you're trying to say, then have the tools to go back and look those things up at our own pace and figure out what it is you're trying to say, and then respond to that. So if we all just write things down our own way, however it is it sounds to us, we're not able to do that in a way that's as productive as it could be. It still works. It's fine if you've been doing it that way. It's totally fine, but it's time to let it go. Adopt the alphabet. Adopt the way the spelling works, so that you can pronounce things back correctly. So you can practice recognizing the root words, recognizing conjugation. Conjugation means taking nouns and giving it aspect and tense. Or taking verbs and giving it aspect and tense, and adding in nouns and all that kind of stuff. And we use those as small building blocks. So what we're doing now is getting you to a point where you can talk like C spot run, and then we're going to add on to that, and then add on to it some more, and then add on to it some more, so that you're really, really comfortable. And the basis of that is the alphabet. So we're going to go through it real quick. The first letter, I guess you would call it, is the glottal stop. The glottal stop is like saying half of the letter. The Discord's not set up yet, Amelia, and neither is the group chat. Once those are available, I'll make sure they get out to everybody. Discord is like a group chat, but it's web-based in a way that it's like its own social media. A lot of people use it for gaming purposes. They have chats based around gaming. You can do, and so it's a text or a voice, so you can do text back and forth and discuss things, or you can sort of go live like we are now with multiple people, and it's a chance to talk amongst ourselves. Okay, Discord is a web-based service, but it's not up yet. Once we do get it up, we'll let you know if that's what you want to do. We'll also have a Facebook Messenger one if that's what you want to do. Just let us know your preference, and we'll add you to either one. The glottal stop is like saying half of the letter. So the way that we try to explain it is sort of like the front half of uh-oh. So in this case, we're using the letter ah, and so when we say the word crow, we're saying ah. So we kind of take that ah, and then we cut the ah in half, and then we put another ah on there. So it's almost like a pause, like pausing halfway through that sound. The next character here is not really a letter in the alphabet, but a very important part of learning the alphabet, and this is the symbol that indicates where the stress is on the word. So the example that's given here is the word for milk, or the word for breast is the same thing. It's pronounced kahas, not kahas, but kahas. So it helps us get the right emphasis on the right syllable. We can still understand what you're saying most of the time, but having the emphasis in the right place is really important. And as we start conjugating verbs, it becomes even more important. So the first real letter that we're used to seeing is the letter A. The sound it makes is ah. It can be lengthened, so you go from pa hop to hama. So it just holds that A sound just a little bit longer. And then we go into the diphthongs. Diphthongs are where we add these resonant consonants to the end of the vowels. I know that sounds super fancy, but in my opinion, they aren't super necessary. When we're reading in language and we look at AW, I feel like we naturally make the sound ow, right? So if you know that this makes ah and this makes wa, then when you see it in the word here, it comes out as loud tiwa, loud tiwa. Okay. If you're confused about that, we can go into a whole lesson on diphthongs. There's a whole bunch of them. I'm not convinced that it's super important. I don't think that it's important at this stage, but that's something that we can dive into a little bit deeper if you guys need to. Same with the Y. The A and the Y becomes I, right? So it becomes my is the word for hot dogs, which started out as a word for intestines, but once hot dogs were introduced, that's how we described them. So I, and then the A can be lengthened, so it becomes my. So you're just holding on to that A sound just a little bit longer. Pretty self-explanatory, I think. If you're struggling with that concept, let me know. We can go over it in a little more detail. The next letter is the letter C. In our language, the letter C is pronounced like the TS sound, which is like the end of the word hats. Hats. Your teeth go together and you kind of blow air through your teeth. Hats. So the word for blanket is tsitskan. 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 This letter is, I'm noticing it's getting a little bit, starting to change a little bit. I hear people pronouncing it as ch. So like the word for rainbow is watsamios. Watsamios. And I hear people saying wachamios. Wachamios. Languages change over time. I mean, ultimately, it'll be up to you guys how it sounds. I heard from multiple of my elders that that was never the way that we pronounced that letter or those words. We wouldn't say chichkan, and so that's the way that I'm teaching it. It's a t sound. And then now we're getting into our first ejective. So this little, if you're looking at my mouse here, this little apostrophe over the top of the C makes the C an ejective. So we're just giving it extra emphasis. So where the word for blanket is tsitskan, the word for speaking or for words is tsikan. Tsikan. Like that. Tsikan. So we're going from, so the letter tsa and the letter tsa are two different sounds, two different letters in the alphabet. So you have tsa and tsa. And that happens regularly. There's a bunch of other letters that get glottalized here. We'll go over those. You can write them two different ways. I prefer them that you write it this way, with the apostrophe over the top of the letter. If you don't have the right keyboard to do that, writing it this way is acceptable too. We just don't want to get in a glottalized letter confused with a glottal stop, so we have to be a little bit careful. If you're wondering how to write these special characters, if you're using a laptop or a computer, you go to the website interiorsalish.com. Shout out to Kristen Parr for getting us hooked up with this. This website here, you can download the keyboard for free onto your machine. So you go to Sahapton Font Keyboard. If you're using Windows, you click that one. If you're using Mac, you click that one. I didn't find the keyboard in here. I use a Mac. It wasn't in the Mac. I opened the Windows. I didn't see it in the Windows. So I ended up downloading the Salish font and keyboard. And they're real close. It has all the symbols that you need in there. It looks it gives you a keyboard key that looks like this. So it gives us all of the special symbols that you're seeing, like the accent and the glottal stop, and we'll go over a few more of those. Okay. If you have trouble with that, let me know. If you're using your phone and you need to have access to those, I use an app called IPA Keyboard. I wonder if I can open it in my app store on this map. Maybe. Oops. Should have did this ahead of time, but I was doing other stuff. So you guys won't have to listen to me type. It looks like this. That's its little symbol. You can kind of see it there, and it's just called IPA Phonetic Keyboard. Works pretty good. You just install it. Allow your. I'm gonna talk about mostly iPhone because that's what I use. You allow your keyboard section in the general settings to access that keyboard, then you can switch back and forth. It's a little bit clunky. If you just hold down the vowels, like if you're just typing regular without switching keyboards, and you get to the letter A and you hold the letter A down, it will pop up the option for you to put an accent on it. And so if you do that and you write your glottalizations this way, you can get 90% of the right way to type without installing anything. But these two applications will allow you to have the ability to do all of them. And there's a few special ones that we'll talk about that you may not need. You may not really need them. But those applications will 100% give you everything that you need. Okay. So the next letter here is the letter E, and it's pronounced ah. Again, it can be elongated. It gets the diphthongs. It's never going to change, right? So the letter A, the letter C, all of these, the letter E, they're always going to make the same sound. And in English, that's not always the case, right? So you spell cat, C-A-T, and you spell father, F-A-T-H-E-R. Well, the A in both of those is pronounced completely different. So in father, the A is pronounced ah, and in cat, the A is pronounced ah. We don't have that in Indian. It's easy to sound these things out, right? Whenever you see that letter, it's always going to make that sound. It's never going to change. H is just like English. It makes the H. I makes the E. So when you strengthen it out, it sounds like Enim. Or in this one, in this case, it would be Enim, because you can see the accent there is on the second one. So it would be Enim. And then the word for my or mine is enim. Okay, this K here is just like the K in English. There's a difference between ka and k. So you have ka and k. You have L, which makes the ul sound, and then you have the glottalized version, which doesn't eject because you don't. You're using a different part of your throat or a different part of your mouth, right? So when you say the letter L, your tongue presses up against your teeth a little bit, so it's hard to make an ejective. So that makes what we call a resonant, which basically means like a creaking sound. So you have latis, and then you have pa-la. So you take the L and it becomes oh instead of oh, it becomes oh. Okay. The L with the bar through it here is called the barred L, but it makes the THL sound. So you take your tongue and you press it up against the back of your teeth, and then you blow air out the sides. So the word for bitter root is slitan, right? So slitan. M is just like English. It becomes titmas when you glottalize it, and the same way. is just O. Your lips make the letter O. O to. Oi, oikala, liloitsa. P the same way. That's going to be an adjective, so that strong P is going to become p, p, p. You're like you're mad. You're just putting extra emphasis on it. That's it. The Q, in our language, makes a unique sound. Your mouth goes back into the shape of an O, but the sound comes from back in your throat, so it becomes ka, ka. Mimkos, pisokis. So you take that Q sound and then you pop it, put extra emphasis on it. It moves a little farther back in your throat. So ka and okay. S sound is just like English. The one exception that we have here that you can see written in this section is we introduce the idea of the Cayuse dialect. So in Cayuse, we would say koosh, and that's what this wedge above the S represents. It basically puts an H next to the S. So it becomes, instead of koos, it becomes koosh. Okay? Say either way is acceptable. That's going to be the main difference between Cayuse and what we're calling the Cayuse language and what we're calling the Nez Perce language. The Cayuse does have a lot of other subtle differences. So some of the words are completely different. Some of the way they're pronounced is a little different, like the difference between Maiwi and Maimi. Maimi is Cayuse. Kathleen Gordon was adamant that it was Maimi, and that there were other people that pronounced it that way. And other words too. I don't want to go down that road just yet. For right now, we're just focusing on the fundamentals of learning the language, but there's a lot of other subtleties there, and it's worth preserving. So if your family comes from a family of pronouncing it in the Cayuse dialect, well, I'll try to point the differences out as much as I can. There's other teachers, like we had Sarita last week. Kristen drops in from time to time. They may pop up in the group chat and point out the differences between the Cayuse dialect and the Nez Perce dialect. Okay. T is just like English in Titokan. You can turn it into it will become an adjective from time to time. So watu, so ta and ta. Okay. U as in kuts kuts. Then when it gets longer, it becomes nu snu. Ikuin, when it blends with the Y there in the diphthong. W, just like English, it creaks like all the other resonants do. X is a unique sound, so it's different. We want to make sure that we are emphasizing the differences between our vowels and some of our consonants. So we want to make sure we're clear on the difference between ah, and e in some of our vowels, and then we have oo and o, and then with this X, it can sound a little bit like an H. There isn't no F sound like it in English, so we're using the letter X to represent a sound that we have in Indian that we don't have in English. So the X is a sort of like you're hawking up a bit of a loogie. So H is and the X is, and then when you glottalize it, it becomes so there's more gooey stuff, if you will, that is part of the glottalized X. So we want to make sure that when we're seeing an H and when we're seeing an X, we're pronouncing those differently. And then the Y is just like English. Okay, so that's enough on the alphabet. Let's talk a little bit about. I want to talk about the Nez Perce dictionary here a little bit. It's available in the Dropbox. So you should go and download it, have it on your phone. It will work on your phone. If you're having problems with that, let me know. For you iPhone users, I prefer to I prefer to open it in books. That becomes standard on your iPhone. You can't even delete it unless you jailbreak your iPhone. And it's great because you can bookmark it. You can bookmark every letter of the alphabet, so you don't have to scan through all of the letters in the alphabet. You can just open up books, go right to the letter A, go right to the letter C, go right to the letter X, and then you can skip all the way to the end, where we switch from looking things up in Indian to looking things up in English. So very helpful that way. Doesn't take up a whole lot of room. I mean, I have an iPhone 11. I think this is an iPhone 11. It works fine on there. So any Android users who are in the group, if you want to drop us a note about what's working best for you, you're welcome to. If you're having problems getting the dictionary from my Dropbox, let me know. If I have to print it out and bring it to your house, I'll do that. Whatever, we're doing whatever we have to do to get this in your hands, because it's a very important tool. At the beginning of the dictionary, it goes through everything that's in here. So it talks about vowel harmony and word classes and stems and prefix. It gives you a pronunciation key, tells you the references from where they got these examples that are in the dictionary. Okay, so it's worth looking at. If you're looking at something in the dictionary and it's not making sense, like, what is this little chunk of letters here? I don't understand what this means. If you look it up in the front of the dictionary, it probably will make sense. So if we look at the first entry here, it's telling us it's a transitive verb. It gives us this clump of letters. If you look this clump of letters up in the front of the dictionary, it'll tell you exactly what it means. Same with these, same with this. But for the most part, what we're looking for right now is the examples. So when we look up this word in the dictionary, it's going to tell us more than just what it means. Okay, and it's going to tell us how it's used. It's going to give us some examples. Most of you won't be looking up words in the dictionary in Indian to start with. So we're going to skip. The dictionary is set up with the first 25 pages telling us how to use the dictionary. The next 1,125 pages are all the words that we've collected in the language. But if you go all the way to the back of the back of the dictionary, it gives us the words in English. So you go to page 1,126. This starts the English to Indian translation. So, for example, if you're looking up the word for accident, which we've been using multiple weeks, it'll say accident, to be in, to cause someone to have, a slip, a mistake, all different translations for the way you could use the word accident. And then it'll give you the root word. That's going to be really important that you understand what the root word is. Most of the time it's going to be a verb, but it can be a noun. So we're going to change the verbs and the nouns. Verbs are doing something, so like playing, acting, jumping, something that involves movement. Nouns are a person, place, or thing. Okay, so different parts of speech there. So here it's telling us with the V here that it's a verb and it's in the C class. You don't have to worry about the C class yet, but it's going to be super important. We're going to go over it, but I just want you to understand how to use the dictionary. That's what we're talking about right now. So it gives us the root word here. So to understand how to use the translation in Indian for the English word accent, we're going to look up the word wiyauk. If this is the translation that we're looking for, it gives us another way of translating accident here, which is accidental slip or a mistake. It gives us an example here, and then it tells us what the root word is here. Okay, and then you can see the root word in the dictionary there, W-L-I-P-S-I. You have almost all of the root word that it shows as the example here. But for the sake of what we're talking about, we're going to look up the word wiyauk. So we're going to go to the W section of the dictionary. I already know what page it is because we've been over this multiple times. Actually, I don't. What was it, 847? Something like that. In books, you can skip through all of this. PDF reader that I'm using on my Mac is a bag of bones, man. You can't just type in the letters that you want to, where you want to go, but in books you can, and it makes it super nice to just skip through everything that you're not needing. Okay, I missed the 840 minute. Let's look this up in the dictionary. There we go. W. Oh, totally messed that up. A, B, C. So we want W-I, right? W-I-Y. It's normally, it's way more efficient than this in books. I apologize. I've been opening it up to the right page for the last couple lessons now. I don't know why I didn't do it today. Getting too comfortable, I guess. No, I'm struggling. My ears are starting to get hot. W-I, we're getting closer. I don't know how I messed that page number up so bad, but there it is, 902. Samsonite. It's way off. So we have the word for we out right here, and it gives us all these different examples. We got to kind of hustle. I'm spending more time than I wanted to on this. All these different examples. But you'll notice it looks a little bit different right here. So all that's happening is this dot right here is basically elongating the A. So where we were looking in the Nez Perce dictionary where we had the A with the accent and then there was another A next to it, that's what that dot is representing, okay? And then it's giving us all these examples. So it'll go on to tell us how you would say I got hurt. And if now lakaike is how we pronounce automobile. It's actually the word for wagon, but then it became the word for automobile later. So you see the word for wagon there, and then it gives you a double and a period. So it's referencing this word just directly above it here. So everywhere from the on beneath this example where it's indented, all these W's are going to reference that. So it would be now lakaik I wiauchna. Okay. Watupaina wiauchna. That's what that W represents, okay? And then it gives other examples. And there's a whole page of different ways that you can conjugate this verb to say what it is that you want to say. And the dictionary is incredibly helpful for that, okay? So that's what I want you, that's what we're going to be practicing when we get into the group chat. You're going to, if you want to, you're going to pick some topic. I got into an accident today. And you don't have to, we don't need a whole paragraph. All I really want you to practice is just conveying that thought. I got into an accident today, or I was in an accident today. So you would go to accident in the English section. You're going to look up, it would tell you to look up this verb, wiauk. Scroll through here. It might give you exactly the interpretation that you're looking for. You type it out exactly that way. You put it in the group chat. and then you wait for us to figure out what it is you're trying to say. And I know in a way it feels like a puzzle, but that's how we have to start out, right? We have to, like we're little kids, we have to untangle all of this stuff to understand what people are saying. And when you do it in English, by the time you're in fourth, fifth grade, you pretty much have it all figured out. But when you're a little kid and you're trying all this stuff out, it's cute, right? Everybody laughs when you say things that's weird. Like take the verb in English for is to go. Okay, I'm going somewhere. So most of the time when you say something in past tense in English, you add an ed on the end. But in English, we all know that you can't say I goed. But little kids will do that, right? They'll be like, I goed there. And it makes us all laugh, and it's funny, and it's cute. But that's us giving them feedback that that's not the way that you pronounce it correctly in English. And so what we're doing is, because we're all adults here and we all speak English, we're trying to get your confidence up to a level where you have fewer of those instances, and you can unpack some of this stuff and begin to speak with your peers in a way that makes sense. You're still going to have those kind of instances. Most of the time you won't when you're dealing with your language buddy, because you guys are learning at the same time, and that's super helpful. It's good to go through that. It's good for kids to talk that way to other kids and feel accepted and appreciated, and that's the importance of a language buddy. But we also need teachers and elders to help point us in the right direction, so we're going to try to help you do that through the group chat as well. Okay, does that make sense? These are the tools to help you become self-learning and self-teaching. You can spend more time when it's convenient for you learning the language if you have these tools. Okay, so we talked about the alphabet, we talked about the dictionary, we talked about why it's important. These are all things that we've covered in the other lessons. So if you're here tonight, everything that we're going over is all stuff going back to the very beginning. So you're not missing out on anything, but we can, and I will go back and record the episodes that aren't available right now, so that we can put them all together. So now let's talk about how all of this works. So we have this word wealk, which is the root word, and then it tells us that we can add this, for example, heat, H-I, accented, long I, so we hold on to that I sound just a little bit longer, and then T with a dash. So this dash tells us that it's a prefix, and a prefix, pre meaning before or at the beginning, means you're going to add it on to the front part of your verb. So the verb is wealk. It's telling us something, some kind of action, in this case to be in an accident. So when we add this heat onto the front, you can see it just attaches right onto the front of the wealk, nice and cleanly. And then we have a couple letters onto the end here that aren't part of the root word, okay? And that's going to be the tense. And so this is telling us that we are in the present tense. So I am going to destroy mine. It sounds that way in English, but if you were going to translate it directly, you'd be saying cause accident right now. Like I'm doing it right now. I'm causing this destruction right now. Causing destruction ing. Basically, in English we would add ing is the same as the ca that you see here. Okay, that's verb conjugation. We're adding stuff onto these verbs to tell us who is doing the doing and when they were doing it. Okay, that becomes really important. And in Nez Perce, I feel like it's easier. In English, English is the most complicated language in the world. It's completely hard to learn. There isn't a really good system, and English teachers do a great job of trying to teach us that there's a system, but there's always exceptions to the rule, right? They always say that there's always an exception to the rule in English. So it becomes this pile of stuff that we have to memorize. In this case, if we can memorize the system, we can accomplish 75% of what it means to speak the language, okay? And then we have all these other rules that we're going to add on to also, but our rules are very predictable. My sister sent me a TikTok the other day that had a list of all these words that are spelled almost exactly the same, And his joke was that none of these words rhyme in English, but look how closely they're spelled to each other. And then you take these two words, which the two words that did rhyme, I think, were pony and baloney, which are spelled completely different. And he's just like, make this make sense. And that's kind of how English is. I think it was like dough and cough and tough, and I guess cough and tough rhyme, but we got fought and trough, what are all spelled with the O-U-G-H, but they're pronounced completely different. And then you have pony and baloney, which looks like it's pronounced bologna, that all rhyme. We don't have any of that in Indian. Everything is very, very predictable. Okay, so let's talk about how this conjugation of verbs works. You don't have to pay all that much attention to all these big words. It makes us sound intelligent when we know what these big words like pronominal prefixes mean, but it's not 100% necessary. All you really need to understand is that when we're talking about aspect, almost always that's going to happen in the front of the word in the form of a prefix, so it gets added onto the word. And the verbs in their most simplest form don't even need any prefixes on them to give aspect. So here we have the verb for going in, which is oughts, and we don't add anything to the front. Adding nothing to the front means that the subject is I or you. So you have to do nothing with it. You just go right to the verb. Super simple. You put this on the end, and that gives you the past tense, and then you have a sentence. In English, you'd have to say I went in. In Nez Perce, you could just say Atsa. Atsa. I went in. Atsa. And that's it. You're saying I went in, and we know that, right? Because we know that you don't have to put anything on the front. You're talking about most of the time when we leave it off there in a simple statement. You're talking about yourself. If you change it to a question, you still don't have to change it, but we get it, right? We know that you're assuming second person or you. So first person is I, second person is you. And then third person is everyone else, somebody over there. And in Indian, we don't assume gender. So it can be he, it can be she, or it can be anything. It can be any kind of noun. You could be talking about a hammer. You could be talking about your brother. And the way that we signal that we're talking in third person is by using this prefix hi. So you see here we have it in these brackets here. Brackets. I guess it is technically a bracket, but they're forward slashes. And the reason that we're doing that is because once we start putting these pieces together, it becomes important to know which pieces are which. Okay. So all we're signaling here is that this he is its own thing. So you put this he on the front, and that now we're talking about somebody over there. So he did it, she did it did it, singular, something over there. Okay. This paper gets into translation, which is good. It's going to be helpful. You should download it. It's in the Dropbox. You can kind of work through it a little bit. But if you added the he onto the front, of the word was, we have the verb going in, we have the verb to go, we have the verb to die, we have the verb for go out, and we have the verb for paina, and we have the word for was. So if I was going to translate number 28 here, he was, I would go up here, find the verb. Okay, the verb here is whack. It looks like whack. So if I put he on the front of that, it becomes he wacka. That's how you would say he was. Just add that he right onto the root word there. I'm going to try to find some better examples of he here. Yeah, so here's a good example. We have the word for bloomed is lati, which is also the same for flower. So we're just putting that he right on the front there. Hilatia. It bloomed. There's some other stuff going on there, but I don't want you to focus on that too much. I just want you to focus on the concept, adding stuff to the front of these words that changes the aspect, okay? Last week we only talked about singular person, but here they go right to talking about pluralizing something, and pluralizing just means that there's more than one. So if we add this pa to the front, you can see it has this little dash inside the brackets there. It tells us it goes on the front of the words. So if we add that to the root word ku, which means to go, then we have pakuya, he went. Patnuchna, we died. So it's first person, second person together, but pluralized. So us, we, right? You put these two together, and then you get they. So we're pluralizing those guys over there. So it's not just one, he, she, or it there. It's multiple ones. And we do that with, so the he comes first, he pa. So if we were going to say they went, would become he, third person, pa, plural, and then kuya, he pekuya. That's how you would translate number 26 there. So we're stacking those two prefixes together in a specific order. The he tells us we're talking about somebody over there. The pa tells us we're talking about more than one person over there. And then we have the verb that tells us what those guys are doing in this case. They're going, and then the a on the end tells us it's past tense, so we're saying they went. Okay. So the hipa is the they, and then the a on the end would change go to went. You wouldn't say that. The direct translation in Indian would be they goed. We don't. The whole word doesn't change like that. It will change, but it doesn't change to something completely different, where the go just becomes went. I don't understand how that happens in English. I'm sure there's some linguistical term for how that happens, maybe. But in Indian, it would sound more like they goed. Okay. I got a couple messages from people saying that this was a pretty complicated concept to wrap your brain around. So that's why I want to spend a little more time going over it. If you're still struggling with what we're doing here with tense and aspect, you can put specific questions in the comments. We can go over them right now. You can message me later. We can talk about it a little bit. But we're adding aspect. Who is doing the doing, and then we're adding tense into when they did it. Did they do it yesterday? Are they doing it right now? Or are they going to do it in the future? Those are the simple parts of it. There's a whole bunch more that we can add on there, but there's no need to go down that road until we can understand that this is how we're putting sentences together. So in English, we have all of this, did you all die? We can accomplish that with just two words, basically. Wat, which is the word to signify a question, and then we just by looking at the word patnuchne, we know that we're talking about first, second person plural. So us, die. The word for die, past tense. Did you all die? That's kind of a weird translation, but we're just trying to. You obviously wouldn't ask, did you all die to somebody? Because you could either tell that they were dead or alive just by looking at them most of the time. But might be great for memes. But did you die? Anyway, that's how we're putting these pieces together. So what's going to start happening is we have more pieces that we're going to add into the front, and that we're going to add different pieces that we can add on to the ends of these verbs, and sometimes even the nouns, that help us understand who's doing the what and when they're doing it. Okay? Tense and aspect. Who is doing the doing and when are they doing it? This is fundamental. And so when you're looking up things in the dictionary, you're seeing that happen, right? That's verb conjugation. So if you were just going to do it the way that we do English, you'd have to memorize all of these things. You'd have to memorize what that means. You'd have to memorize what that means. You'd have to memorize what that means. Here, all you have to memorize is the system, and then you can add vocabulary. So you have stuff that goes on the front, stuff that goes on the end. You know what the system is, and then you can creatively put these things together. And it's incredibly fascinating to hear people who really have a good grasp of the language and how they put prefixes and suffixes on these root words and create meaning and create deeper meaning and create maybe meaning that's not quite so deep by the way that they add it. And then they put extra emphasis on it by the more important parts that they're discussing will be earlier will come first, and then the less important parts will come later. And so you can emphasize things by doing it that way. It becomes this beautiful, rich language. It allows you to be incredibly creative with how you make your sentences. So the system is really, really important. And if we can understand the basics of it, then it's like building blocks, right? We can add more stuff onto it and just continue to build up onto it. But if you break it down into its smallest form and you speak see, spot, run, there's nothing wrong with that. We can still understand what you're saying, and it'll still you'll find in trying to create these translations that you'll gain a greater sense of connection, especially if you're a root digger or a hunter or somebody who's connected to the ceremonies. That the way that we translate things and the way that we say things gives us a greater connection to our culture and to the land, and that's really what we're after, right? Like, you're not going to get, if you went to work for Google tomorrow, they're not going to pay you more because you speak Nez Perce. We're connecting ourselves to our culture and to our heritage. And so that's one of the things that I really want to emphasize tonight is, what is your motivation for trying to learn the language? Because that's really going to affect whether or not you, how much you actually remember. Okay? So if you're just here grinding out these lessons because you feel like it's the right thing to do, it's going to be really difficult for you. Think about your favorite movie. How is it that you can recall lines from your favorite movie with no effort, little to no effort? How is it that you can remember your address and your phone number? It's because those things are important, or because they're meaningful to you, or because you find them entertaining, or because you're connecting with it somehow. So you really need to think about what it is about the language that it's important to you. Some good examples are new mothers. When I was really involved with the language program, there were all kinds of people who had just had babies, and they were motivated. You could tell that they really wanted to learn the language because they wanted their kids to learn the language. So they would show up, and I always thought that would be the best way. We had a meeting one time where they brought us all together, and they were asking us, what do you think is the best way to get people to want to learn the language? And I was like, pay them. And everybody was like, money? You can't involve money. I was like, yeah, you can, man, pay them. I was like, what you should do is everybody who goes on maternity leave and can't work at whatever their normal job is while they're, healing and taking care of their baby, you should allow them to bring their baby to the language class and pay them a wage for being there. So they don't have to use their leave, so they can still have a paycheck, and they're motivated. New moms are some of the most motivated people I've ever met in my life, and I just thought that would be an incredible social way to accomplish multiple things very easily. But my ideas aren't always well received. But you yourself should be thinking about what motivates you. Maybe maybe you have an elder in your family who still speaks the language, and you're really trying to connect with them in a way that's meaningful to them in the latter parts of their lives, and the language is important to them. That's how it was. That's how it was for me. I feel connected to the language because of my grandpa and everything that I went through with him, and it comes and goes. But now I feel super lonely without him, and when I think about him and the times that we had or whatever, that's what helps fuel my motivation. I also have a new son, and that's part of why I'm doing what I'm doing. I was thinking, well, I really want to teach him the language. I really wanted to teach Latas the language, and him, and our circumstances just didn't allow it at the time for different reasons. But there's nothing, I don't think, in the way of stopping me from teaching Elias how to speak the language. And so I started trying to go through those motions, and I'm like, man, I don't even remember how to say that. Like, I know how to say this. And so that's how this whole idea, that's my motivation. That's how this idea came about. Like, I got to get reconnected. I gotta start using it, or I'm gonna forget it. And that's something that people say all the time. You gotta use it, or you'll forget it. We used to hear it all the time, and I roll my eyes like, oh my gosh, same speech again. But it's 100% true. Look at me now. They'd all be laughing at me like, I freaking told you so. You think you know everything, but now look at you. It's super important to use it all the time. And so this is my way of getting back into it and remembering it. All the times that we're going over this stuff is helping to remind me and refresh my memory about these things that are important to me. So it doesn't even matter what your motivation is. If you're here because you're like me and you're a light-skinned Indian, and you feel like you have something to prove, I don't care if you're here because you want to learn the language to get back at your ex. Whatever your motivation is, you need to really, really think about that. And that's wanting to learn it, like really feeling motivated or connected to it, is what's really going to help it stick in your brain. And maybe this concept feels really outside of what you're comfortable with, but if you feel motivated about it, you're going to dig into it, right? You listen to the class multiple times and try to get as much of it, as much of that as you can to stick. And that's going to be what's important. And that's why I'm teaching you the self-learning tools, is because however motivated you are about learning the languages, how quickly it's going to happen and how well it's going to stick. And there's nothing I can do. I would, if I thought sitting here every day for 9 hours each day teaching these lessons would get you to where we could all speak the language. That's 100% what I do. But I watched my grandpa grind out language classes day in and day out, and people were coming and going all the time, and that's fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, even if we're only just remembering a little bit. That's something, but however far you're going to take it really is going to be however far you want to take it, and these tools are going to give you the exact ability to do it however far you want to take it. And there won't be any judgment from me if you come out the end of this and you can't really speak it that well. It's fine. You were here and you were trying and you got some exposure, and maybe in 2 years somebody else explains it in a way that makes more sense and that you feel more connected to, and then you could take another step. That's something, that's we're working towards something in that sense. And so I feel like I was thinking about that yesterday. I feel like that's a really important concept to get across. Understand what your motivation is for being here, and that's what will help fuel you to go to the next step. And maybe right now you don't know, you just feel like you have to be here, but it's something that you should be asking yourself, and in your mind. It's going to get more complicated from here. We're going to add more stuff in. We can totally go back over stuff, start from the beginning, whatever we need to do. But it's going to be something that we're just going to keep building on all these concepts. I probably won't go back over the alphabet again unless somebody asks me specifically. We're going to go on to other topics. I'll go back and try to record the gaps in between lessons 1 and number 5. If you were here for them, great, but in order to put that podcast together, I think it makes sense to at least put a couple more in between lessons number 1 and lessons number 5, and now lesson number 6. This new software will allow it to be right on the timeline. Okay, Normacia, will be right on the timeline. You can go back and watch it. You can scrub the timeline, go back over anything that you need to know. You're welcome to ask me questions. Download the dictionary. That's really important. Learn the alphabet. That's really important. And we'll keep building on that. We're going to launch the group chat. I have a post about people who are wanting to be in the group chat. If you didn't comment on that and you want to be in the group chat, we're not expecting you to post anything. I don't think anybody's going to call you out unless you have friends or family in there that are expecting you to put something in there. Otherwise, it can just be something that you're another way that you're exposed to the language. You can turn your notifications off so you're not getting bothered during peak posting times. But it'll be an opportunity for you to kind of wade through stuff and be a part of that. We'll have there's a couple of experienced language people who will be in the chat too. So hopefully we can kind of keep that moving. So that somebody's responding to the things that you guys are putting in there. It's not just a black hole. If nothing's being added in there, I'll make an effort to put things in there as much as possible. But I just feel like it's really important for us to talk back and forth. Right? I've seen multiple people who have a great grasp of the language, but when you try to talk to them in the language, it's a struggle. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I really feel like Facebook and these social media platforms are a great way for us to interact with each other in our language in a way that's meaningful for all of us, in a way that we can do it in our own pace and in our own time. We all got stuff to do. I think the group chat's going to be really helpful that way. So I have a good list for Facebook Messenger if you want to be on Discord because you don't like using Facebook, or if you want to be on a WhatsApp chat, or if you know people that do, have them get in touch with me or get in touch with me on their behalf, and we'll get something going in a way that people can tap into the language in a way that's meaningful. And then I'll try to get those Spotify podcasts up, the YouTube stuff up, so people who are on Facebook can have a way to be connected to it, and then we'll just keep trying to build on that as much as we can. Right, I'm going to end the live stream. Even though it's over, you're welcome to comment on the post or shoot messages. Watch it back as many times as you need to watch it. ask questions or whatever you need help with, and I'll help you as much as I can. I'm going to keep plan this to go to the end of the year. After that, I'll reassess how well people are receiving it and whether it's something worth continuing to do. I don't want to just talk to myself, so interact with the post and the podcast or whatever, and that'll give me a good indication of how much we're going to keep going. All right, I'll see you guys on Monday.